I like that. Woo. That is a good song. Al, thank you very much, brother. I'd like to share that Al's got him some passion, and we appreciate the job that he's going to be doing over at ACU and new chairman of the American Conservative Union. He's following a heck of a leader. You know, you think about David Keene. He has done some great things over at ACU, and it's not going to be any easy task, but I got a great idea that he's going to be able to keep CPAC mighty strong. So, you know, this annual meeting has truly become an incubator. That's what I call it. I said, it hatches some great ideas. Some great conservative thought gets hatched. And a lot of it gets hatched right out there in that audience. This is a place for like-minded people to come, to get reconnected, to recharge, refocus, talk about the pressing issues of the day. I stand before you today as a governor, as a lifelong conservative who is deeply, deeply concerned with this federal government and its willful neglect of their responsibilities. You know, if you were to ask 10 people, if you were just to gather up 10 people around you in here and ask them to define the responsibilities of the federal government, you'd likely get a whole bunch of different answers. And some would probably be some pretty long lists. But if you took those lists and then you compared them to the federal government's job description in the Constitution, you might be a little surprised. You might be a little shocked. You might be a little appalled. Now, that job description is drawn from various articles of the Bill of Rights. But as a governor, I tend to kind of like and focus on the 10th Amendment. It's a very sensible dividing line between our rights and their responsibilities. You see, the 10th Amendment casts a narrow role for the federal government, and it conveys our founders' understanding that the government closest to the people truly governs best. You see, its key phrase reads, powers not delegated to the United States by the Constitution, nor prohibited by it to the states, are reserved to the states respectively or to the people. That is beautiful. That is beautiful in its simplicity. And I'll tell you, nowhere in there do I read that the government is responsible for solving every problem affecting every person in this country. You know, even if the people in this town do consider that their responsibility, it's not in the Constitution, I'm sorry. If in our lifetime the federal government has decided that certain opportunities to expand their power and actually responsibilities and whittled away at the individual liberties, and our state sovereignty has been put at risk. And it's just frustrating as hell. You know, at the same time, you got big government advocates and their friends in the mainstream media who have marginalized the voices of those who protest. They call us reactionary or lacking compassion. Do you agree with me that the only solution to our challenges is, or excuse me, do you agree with them that the only answer to our challenges is more taxation, more borrowing, more spending, more central control? Me neither. You know, over time, Washington has extended so-called, they pitched out lifelines to potential voting blocks. Lines that now bind the hands of state leaders, choke off individual liberties at every turn. As people of conscience, our challenge is to unite our people, to untie those knots that restrain us and return to the vision of our founders. And heaven knows that the time is right. As a time such as this. Amen. You know, just 3 months ago, American voters sent a pretty bold, a rather simple message to our nation's political establishment. And it wasn't complex. It's pretty understandable. In fact, it's real short and sweet. They said, "We are fed up. We are fed up. We are ready to take our country back." Americans want government that is leaner, more efficient, less intrusive into their personal lives. They want government that'll live within its means. Americans are obviously fed up with the so-called progressive movements I will tell you, long ago, set aside the people's interest in favor of expanding government and raising taxes while doing the bidding of labor unions and activist judges. Americans' disdain for big government, it cuts across party lines, I'll tell you that. Pink slips were handed out for legislators in both political parties. Ladies and gentlemen who champion that big government idea of bailouts, those so-called stimulus programs, supported government giveaways, they got a pink slip. It was awesome. You see, voters understand the true threat posed by that mountain of debt. My children understand that instinctively. They're increasingly bothered by the idea that our country's going bankrupt. These federal programs. My kids know Social Security is no way ever going to be there for them if it stays in its current status. American people are fed up. They're fed up with bureaucrats telling them how to live their lives, calling the shots in the healthcare industry and telling them what healthcare they got to buy, unspooling more red tape every day. They're fed up with unelected judges telling them when and where they can pray, where they can observe the 10 Commandments. Most of all, they're deeply frustrated by federal officials who don't do anything to address these serious problems. That's what we're really fed up with. This simmering frustration that erupted in an overwhelming landslide of conservative voices on election night, including members of that new, very legitimate force, the Tea Party. Well, I'll say I'm encouraged at the efforts of the new majority in the House of Representatives. I was deeply moved on their first day for them to take the time to actually read the United States Constitution. I'm encouraged by their efforts to repeal Obamacare. I hope that momentum shift in that positive direction continues, better, and that misappropriated power will be returned to the states. You know, I'm reminded of James Madison's perspective from Federalist number 45. He said the powers delegated by the proposed Constitution to the federal government are few, and they are defined. To those which are to remain in the state government are numerous and indefinite. I like that. I am a Madisonian. You know, my fellow Republican governors and I are working with those legislators up on the Hill to even better be stewards, if you will, of those numerous and indefinite powers that the Constitution clearly gave the states. In Texas, that'll take a variety of forms, including our goal of balancing our budget without raising taxes. That's what we're going to do in Texas. Now, I'll tell you, that is a terrifying concept to some people. Oh my God, there are those out there who are wringing their hands, and I love the ones that use the term government revenues. Folks, it's the people's money we're talking about here. It's not government revenues. To hear some of those people speak, you'd think that you know, every state has a magic printing press down in the basement. I can assure you, there is no such thing. You'll find it. Well, never mind. There's just nothing like that down there. Now, here in Washington, D.C., I'm not so sure. I think they got one. Or a bunch of them. And they use them far more than they should. Because to them, it's a lot easier to leverage our children's future than it is to tell somebody no. You see, and as a result of that, the federal government continues to grow and intrude and constrict around our liberties, choking off innovation, discouraging the sort of risk-taking that has made this country great. America's founders certainly fit that category. They were risk-takers. They were getting in on the bottom floor of one of the greatest experiments that's ever happened in mankind's history. They knew enough about human nature, I'll promise you. Mr. Madison, Mr. Adams, Mr. Jefferson, and their friends, they knew enough about human nature and government's overwhelming urge to grow and to overtake everything. And they planned for the worst with that Constitution. So they limited the power of the federal government, and they entrusted the challenges of day-to-day government to leaders at the state and local level. In the centuries that followed, America has been the shining example of the truth that free people work hard. They achieve greater things than those being crushed under the weight of an oppressive government. Unfortunately, America's greatness is at risk because we've allowed Washington to expand at the expense of our liberty. You know, I tried to get my hands around it, my mind around it. You know, maybe it was the siren song of those earmarks for local projects. You know, I don't know. But whatever it was, created a monster. The federal government's current role directly contradicts the principles of limited constitutional government that our founding fathers established to protect us. in the rush to become all things to all people, the federal government has lost sight of its core responsibilities. As a result, we're stuck. We're stuck in this frustrating paradox where Washington actually neglects the things that they're clearly supposed to be doing while interfering in other areas which they're neither welcome nor authorized. Yeah, let me give you an example. And down in my neck of the woods, Texas has a lot of unique features. And including a 1,200-mile international border. And we've got this incredibly long and wonderful and strong relationship with Mexico. We do trade with each other. We marry each other. I mean, it's an incredibly long and wonderful relationship. But the security of that border is one of Washington's essential roles. Protecting our borders. Yet they continue their record of abject failure in that area. And as a result, we continue to deal with violent Mexican drug cartels who work closely with transnational gangs in our states, operating with no regard of the law or respect for life. You'll recall from last fall a story about David Hartley, a young man who was killed on Lake Falcon, and his beautiful wife, Tiffany. We saw just this last week the frustration that comes from him. And not being able to know where her husband's body is. No one's been brought to justice. Very rarely does it seem anybody, even the federal government, cares. You see, the bad actors in Mexico are getting worse. And the risks to our citizens continue to rise along that border. And the communities across this country where those drugs are continuing to flow. And despite stories like this and our frequent requests for support, Washington still hasn't dedicated sufficient resources to secure our international border. We still need 1,000 National Guard troops to support the current law enforcement until they get 3,000 Border Patrol ready to go permanently along that border. And I'm just talking about in Texas. They need to be flying. They need to be flying Predator drones along the Texas-Mexico border. Our kids are training in those somewhere. I tell them, what's so hard about this? You leave from Brownsville, fly up that border, hit El Paso and hang a left. Go to Tijuana and come back. Report back everything to law enforcement that downward-looking radar finds. It's there, providing real-time intel for our local operations centers. These actions would actually fulfill a real federal responsibility. But they send more bureaucrats. Instead of sending us Border Patrol agents that actually we have a need for, they send us more bureaucrats, Ralph. From the unbelievably active EPA, who are hell-bent on derailing our air quality program in Texas that was created 17 years ago and has been meeting federal standards and doing a very good job of cleaning our air. As a matter of fact, we ought to be getting praise from our federal government for a program that has reduced ozone levels across the state of Texas by 27% between 2000 and 2009, more than that achieved by any other state in this nation. But we're being threatened with fines and a lawsuit. And in true Texas style, we made all those improvements in our air. At the same time, we were creating more jobs than any other state in the nation. That's what you ought to be aspiring to in this country. That is what we ought to be trying to get every state to work towards, instead of this effort to punish Texas. You know, it's the darndest thing to me. You got a state that should be the model. People ought to be pointing to Texas and saying, you know what? That is what this country ought to be aspiring to be about. I challenge my Republican friends. I tell them, I said, come over. I mean, get your taxes low, get your regulatory climate fair, get your legal system all balanced out, continue to fund your public schools with accountability, and then get the hell out of the way and let the private sector do what the private sector does best. It is simple. I tell them, I said, listen, I'm just a little animal science major from the blood Texas A&M. But I get it when it comes to government. Keep your taxes low. Have a light burden on your taxation. Have a regulatory climate that is fair and predictable. A legal system that doesn't allow for junk lawsuits, frivolous lawsuits. And finally, introduce accountability into your public schools so your young people are ready and are that skilled workforce when they get out. My fellow Republican governors in Virginia and New Jersey are following that lead, not of what you said, but of those programs. They get it. You see, those governors understand that if you allow freedom from over-taxation, freedom from over-litigation, freedom from over-regulation, free your schools from the overburdening of the unions to allow the kids to truly become what they can be. Now listen, I tell folks, I said, I'm not saying that the state of Texas, as great and as good as it is somehow problem-free. It's not some problem-free nirvana that's been created out of it. Close. And the challenges that we face are very real, but they're compounded by Washington, D.C. Washington's obsession with the primacy of their ideas and their love affair with one-size-fits-all solutions. It is in direct contradiction of their constitutional roles. And speaking of overreach, have I talked about Obamacare yet? I sincerely hope our principal senators, regardless of party, will toss out that train wreck of a plan. Or at least the mandates that cripple our healthcare system. And the fact of the matter is, if we don't, that bill will bankrupt our states and in turn bankrupt this country. Our Medicaid population in Texas and the accompanying financial burden are growing as we speak. And in 2014, if we do not throw Obamacare out, it will cause those numbers to explode. Right now, this Washington-centric approach to health care has a whole lot of states on a collision course with bankruptcy. Instead of oppressive mandates, what we need are solutions. Innovative, thoughtful solutions like block grants, freedom to improve our health care delivery, innovation, flexibility, local control. You and I believe, and at least 2 federal judges have confirmed, that it is unconstitutional and it's wrong. It is wrong for the federal government to force you to buy health care insurance. And in this or any other areas of overreach, we must be united in sending a clear and a simple message to Washington. Enough! 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 Stand athwart history and scream, enough! If you've had enough, I want you to take your phone out right now and I want you to text in the words fed up to 95613. Seriously, you can take your phone out right now. It's not bad etiquette. And text in 95613. We'll keep you tuned in on what we're doing in the state of Texas. What we're doing to push back on this activist federal government. On November the 2nd, the American people sent that exact message. They didn't take out their phones or text 95613, but they said enough, really loud. In the process, they affirmed the power of individual Americans. They repudiated an overly controlling central government. And it's in settings like this, in living rooms and boardrooms, legislative chambers, where we need to keep this conversation going. We need to have a frank discussion about the role of government, the willingness to hold our leaders accountable. Leaders in this town who profess to be conservative should vote to handcuff the big spenders by simplifying our tax system once and for all. And I might add, by passing a balanced budget amendment to the United States Constitution. Now, and I hope, like all of you in this room, or hopefully the vast majority of you in this room, I don't see storm clouds in our future in this country. I really don't. I don't see sadness on the horizon. I see a bright and a prosperous future for America. Now, that future and that brightness on the horizon it's very much attached to whether or not we're going to be able to maintain our essential constitutional values and the individual freedoms from which they were written. Restoring a constitution, limited government. It's going to take a big effort. Getting that constitutional limited government back. It's not just going to happen. We got hard work ahead. But I will tell you, our people are more than up for this task. I believe that charge that is taking hold on this stage today, in that audience today, is going to continue to germinate and grow and become this mighty, stout tree in America. And that governors will lead the charge for reformation in this country. And I encourage you to not only speak your mind to your representatives here in Washington, but do what you can to elect conservative Republican governors in 2012 to keep the momentum going. With the continued influence of this organization, bold leadership from elected officials at every level in this country, we can surely recapture what is great about America. And we can restore this nation to its preeminence in the world as a beacon of individual liberty and economic prosperity, and there is no greater cause in our time. God bless you. Thank you for being here. And through you, may God continue to bless America.
You know the place where they could dance if you want to see it, brother, here's your chance. I've been sent to spread the message. God bless Texas.